I am not Australian, but I am enthused, more enthused than half of our boys who are playing in our last match against Everton. So we'll be dissecting that, hopefully in not too granular detail, because it's pretty painful. I have my own plans for that. So we're going to talk about our glorious goal, and then we might smooth over what happened after. Well, just cover the first 44 minutes, and then after that, we'll talk about themes and questions and things like that. So it's going to be a bit of an ad hoc one. With me today, I have the OG pod daddy himself, Elton. How are things?
Very well, thank you, Mark. And I'm curious as to what the connection is between enthusiastic and Australian and you.
That's a very good
I
point.
would be an enthusiastic Australian, perhaps an honorary one day, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
Sure,
I'm part of this
I'll take
podcast
that.
now. Maybe I'll visit you guys sometime soon.
Take that.
And I'm also here with Sam. He brings the energy. He brings the entropy. We love him. We love the tash. We love the glasses. How are we going, Sam?
I mean, after that intro, I'm doing fantastic. Look, okay, we can whinge today. There will be whinging, but for now, I have just resigned myself to make a nice cup of tea. I am sitting here with my family. Mark is included in that conversation as the honorary Australian. He's just decided that he's going to become. And you know what? I am going to have a nice time, and I will be violent if anyone tries to take that away from me. But for the time being, absolute pleasure to see you both.
Awesome. Always happy to be on with you guys. Let's open it up. Let's go with something very general and broad to begin with, because this is going to be kind of cathartic. It's going to be a therapy session, but I guess we can say Europe is out the question now, right? How are we feeling after Everton? And not just Everton, but how are we feeling about the overall journey of the last month, where Europe was definitely on? We were flirting at around that 8th place spot. We kind of had a tough run. No one said it was going to be easy, but there was a path to Europe. How are we feeling in general? We can be talking about the squad. We can be talking about our performances, but I just want to open that up to whoever wants to have a nibble at it first.
I'm exhausted by it. I'm not even sure that should be the objective we're chasing. It clearly is, because it's a tasty prospect, but I just don't think we're ready. This squad isn't ready, and that would lead us into another discussion about what it might take to get us ready, or for us to be ready to compete in Europe. And I'm just not entirely convinced that we're going to follow through. Should we nick it, just get it over the line by some kind of happenstance, I'd be nervous that we wouldn't actually do the necessary to make us competitive, and it might be a balls up. So yeah, that's kind of where I am.
For me, I think, and this is potentially a hot take, but I think if we actually did get into Europe, based on the kind of year that we've had and just everything that's kind of like happened, and we've flirted with the idea, and it's been kind of like something that we've been looking at as an aspiration for quite a long time. I genuinely feel that if we got into Europe this season, I'm not sure if it would have felt fully deserved. Maybe that's a hot take, but I feel that, like, I mean, I'd love to see like Muniz in Europe. I think he deserves it, but the entire squad, I'm not entirely sure if it would have felt right. It would have felt lucky. It would have felt kind of would have had that sense of terror, because it would have just been like, we got in, we are not ready. We are not in the slightest bit ready. It's a bit like I don't know what the closest equivalent would be, but it's almost kind of like getting invited to go to a festival and have everything paid, and then you have to be there like the day before in somewhere like Queensland, and you just kind of go, this is great, but I have nothing. I have actually nothing. I am not ready in any kind of way, shape, or form. So it would have been awesome, but there would have been so much work that would probably have to have been done that we can actually take into next season, or hopefully take into next season. So I'm going to, again, view this with a sense of optimism. because I feel that it could have potentially been a bit of a disaster if we got to Europe, and that is my narrative, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, I mean, a fair point. I'm also overly optimistic, but I would have liked us to try. We might have failed miserably, but still, that's guaranteed European money. And I don't think the squad definitely isn't there yet. Like, that's a very fair statement to make. But I would hope that that we would invest, and that's a whole nother topic that we can get into later. But it would have been nice, especially when we're talking about the Conference League spots and we're going to like Riga in Latvia or something like that. I think that would have been quite fun for the fans instead of, I don't know, if we somehow locked into a Europa League spot and we're getting battered every single time we went out. So yeah, no, I can understand that. That's a fair point, but we can put it behind us. I guess now we're all just rooting for Palace against Man City so they can take that spot. We'll see how that ends up. But yeah, I think I called it when they beat us at home before the FA Cup match. The way they were playing, or maybe it was the FA Cup match. Anyway, after we lost to Palace, probably the second time, I said, maybe even on this pod, like these guys are going to finish above us. And right now it's not trending well. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
On that note as well, I think you made a really good point. I think if we had like a real attempt and we had these really tightly contested games recently, as opposed to what just kind of just felt like us really dropping the ball, I would probably have a bit of a different attitude to it. But the past like 2 games, I've really just kind of, I don't want to say disappointed or anything, but I've just kind of felt like it's not a squad ready for that position. That's just how it's really, really felt. And I feel that if we had really been down to the wire, pushing through, it felt like we were like gritting it. Everyone was giving absolutely everything. I would probably be a little bit more devastated than I am right now because it felt like it probably would have been within our grasp. Is that fair?
I think that's very fair. And sort of to like add on to that, what is it about our squad do you think that's lacking? I know that's a very broad question. Is it the ceiling? Are they good enough? Is it the depth? I mean, we've talked a lot about depth. Is it even the attitude? Because for me, from what I saw in Everton, I mean, I think there are players that almost always turn up. I think Bassi has a great attitude. I think Robinson, I know he wasn't there, but in general, he has a great attitude. I don't want to name names because that's not a nice thing to do. But in general, like I can point out the ones that really feel like they're trying. And what frustrated me when I watched, this is why I bring up attitude, when I was watching Fulham Everton, which we're going to get into, is I think we had an opportunity where we were passing it around the box and Pereira has about a split second to take a shot and score. And we're already 3-1 down at that point, so the match is pretty much done. And he's lining up the shot, right? And an Everton player comes flying in, last minute tackle. I don't see that from our boys, really. Maybe from Bassi every now and then. But you know what I mean? That sort of, that hunger to really stop the shot, even though you're winning. You're 2-0 up with 10 minutes to go. Not 2-0, a 2-goal lead. But you're hungry to block, to make that block, to not let them get that shot off. I don't really see it from our boys, but what do you guys think in general about the squad as well?
You're quite right. You're quite right. And there have been periods of games this season where we have turned that on, almost reprising the kind of energy of Polinia. And when we do that, it's a sea change. We're a different side. We look super competitive, and sort of to circle back to my thoughts forming in my head as you were asking that question. I remember thinking in the game that for such a long period, I was thinking to myself, "Yep, okay, we're one up, but." We just don't score enough goals. We cannot score enough goals. We can break it down however you like. We can talk about the striker problem. We can talk about our winger problem. We can talk about a number of goals coming from the 10 position or from set pieces, but we just don't score enough goals. And then, of course, we concede 2. Well, so that wasn't the problem. We were ahead, and for the umpteenth time this season, we've lost whilst leading 1-0 up. It must start with a lack of goal scoring menace and real potency. I just think we just can't score enough goals against the good sides or the shit sides. Yeah, I think I think the third or the second goal that went in, um, that's got to be down to an individual error. Leno made a mistake there.
Mhm.
Don't really know how a guy like Leno makes a mistake there because he's pretty safe pair of hands. But I guess everyone's entitled to a bad day at the office, I guess. But that's a costly one when you actually that cost us 2 points. And so yeah, it's super frustrating. But I've heard lots of commentary that try to find positive words that say, we were kind of on the beach earlier last season and the season before, and our run has gone further. But it's just so disappointing that if we'd lost to Villa 2-1 on Saturday, you wouldn't be upset, but we shouldn't be losing to Everton at home. We just shouldn't be.
Like it's very well known. I'm not a methodical mind. I'm a romantic, so I can only kind of see this in my own kind of way. For me, it really just come because I know this is really in like the later stages of the game more so than anything. I'm not necessarily going. I might name some names. I'm sorry, Mark. I might. I won't ask that of you, but I might. For me, it just comes down to just like a sheer lack of desire. Because I think, and I don't actually blame the players for this at all. If we're looking at players like Willian, Traore, Anderson, they're so and Leno as well. They're so established in the Premier League. They don't really have anything to prove at this point. They are, I mean, aside from getting in and out of like the international squads. But I don't think that's very high on players like Willian's agenda, for example, or potentially even Leno's as well. And I think as a result, there is a bit of a lethargy, and they have no kind of real. I think their motivation is I want to play the best game that I can possibly play. And they do it in a very specific way. But if I look at, say, what Josh King was doing from pretty much the second he got on, and what Muniz does all the time, and even what Gotto was doing the second he was there. These guys are playing because they want to be seen, and these guys have so much that they need to remind people of. And like Polina as well. If we're going to go all the way back, Polina is a really good example of this. I think a lot of time we actually forget that Polina was using Fulham as a stepping and above that and go to a really, really big club. And he used us to essentially show the world, this is what I do. I am the thug. I am the Terminator of the midfield. And he did that. So he used it, like, I don't want to say he used us, but he came with a point to prove, and we need more players like that as opposed to the football rehab kind of mentality that we've had for quite a while. And there is significant positives to having that model, but I think we're kind of at the end, or we should at least kind of restructure a little bit, because I want to see players come in and be seriously fighting, not only for their position, but just to actually make a name for themselves, because that's much more fun to watch. And I think that's a lot more needed. And you just find yourself a lot less likely to go 3 goals down to like Everton. You know, that should never happen.
Yeah,
I think Mark, I think your point is a really good one. That lack of grit or sort of just fighting, defensive fighting. Clearly Silva places a high emphasis on beautiful football and great passing and great possession football and great transition football, but there's a huge element to, well, I'd put it this way: it's really difficult to to play against an opposition that have got that capability or that element to their game. And Palace is a great example of teams that just hassle you in the midfield and just are so unsettling because they've got the kind of players who will come at you and take the ball off you and just break things up. And you know, it's probably not a great example or great metaphor, but I remember back in the Alan Border days of cricket. I'm going to use a cricket metaphor here, which might fall on deaf ears.
No, love it.
For present immediate audiences, but Australia in the Alan Border days when he took over the cricket team, we were a shit cricket team and could not win matches. And whereas batting and bowling are the key things that most people focus on, we were clearly no good at either of those things. And Alan Border said, we're going to be a great fielding team. We're going to be the best fielding team. And it's kind of akin to tackling, because you don't, sure, you need a lot of skill to tackle, but it's mostly grit and determination to just go at the player, take the ball off him. It's not the high skill stuff of passing pretty or putting the ball in the top corner of the net. And as much as that's a sort of unsung, or it's not the glory stuff, but it's so important. And I think even the very, very best teams have just got to have that component to it.
Yeah, 100%. I will jump in here quickly, even though we're still need to cover the match. But
no, we don't. We do whatever we want.
Berger pulled his first tactical yellow, which I was a little bit pleased about. So, there's that. He probably got a word in the ear from Marco or from whoever else saying, in this exact situation, it's a breakaway, which we're going to also touch on that because we look terrified when teams are breaking against us. But he just does the shoulder grab, doesn't he, or the shirt grab, and he breaks up the attack, takes the yellow, completely okay with the yellow. Look, he knows it's going to happen, but we're finally getting there. We're getting a little bit more streetwise, which is a small celebration to have.
Absolutely. Here.
All right. So let's cover our goal at least, and then we'll talk about the themes later. But our goal, pretty interesting in terms of, we have our beautiful play. We move it around a little bit. It gets to ESR, who I try to be a big advocate of. And then he sends quite a nice cross out to Raul. And I think this is how you beat a goalkeeper like Pickford, who always seems to turn up against us. It's like England in a World Cup final when he comes to Craven Cottage that just pulls out stunning saves, right? But I think when you're up against a really good keeper, I wouldn't call him world class, but a very good one, you can't take shots at him from range unless it's a postage stamp shot, right? You need to go in where there's no time for him to react. And I think Raul does a really good header there. But, opening up the question again, ESR and Raul, what are our opinions on those guys? Does Raul deserve another contract extension? Is ESR going to come good next season? I'm hopeful he is, but Sam, I'll throw to you first. ESR and Raul, pick one and give me your thoughts.
I think you definitely keep ESR. I mean, I think he can create. There is a guy there. There is a player there. I don't really know what it requires in order to kind of make him the absolute best. I don't know if it's an attitude thing. I don't know if it's a system thing. But I do think he has value. He kind of pisses me off because he does. I mean, look, he got an assist. No one else got an assist, and he is frequently that. He does nothing all game, but he does get a goal. So I can't criticize somebody that much who's actually bringing in points. Jimenez for me, I've thought about this a lot because I think we'll look back very fondly on Jimenez and kind of like what he's actually done for the club, because he has actually been quite consistent, and he has provided goals in this period. Again, it's been a bit of a weird period, like post Mitrovic, and kind of like post Mitrovic, pre Muniz, whatever Muniz is gonna be. He has actually been helpful in this kind of period. But I want us to have some cojones a little bit and just kind of go, no, let's let's get off the training wheels, because I do kind of see Jimenez's training wheels and go, thank you for your service. I've really appreciated you being here, but we need to actually be a bit more serious, focus on somebody younger, focus on somebody that we can build, and again, focus on somebody who has more to prove, because Jimenez has absolutely nothing to prove in the Premier League. He's literally just surviving on the coattails of his history at this point at the moment, and fair enough. But do it at another club. But again, thank you for your service. Really appreciate you. But yeah, I really want us to engage some new players that want.
Look, credit where credit's due for both of these guys. I'm a regular critic, and I don't think an unfair one, of either ESR or Raul. I thought ESR, excuse me, I thought ESR had a reasonable first half yesterday. Certainly, if I look at it over a period of maybe the last 6 or 8 weeks, definitely one of his better performances in the first half. He was bright. He was around the place. He was trying to make things happen. He was part of it. He was looking fairly positive. It concerns me that he only seems to be able to do that for clubs that he's possibly looking down the table at. But nevertheless, I'll take the positives as they come. And I think on balance, it wasn't a terrible performance from him yesterday. I think it's way below what I think we expect of him for the money we've spent and for the position he occupies. I need more. I need more, a lot more, and I need it consistently, and I need it over 90 minutes. Raul, pretty good goal, actually. I thought he scrapped hard for that. As Jack and I were sitting watching that, Jack commented, I think he's right, saying he actually kind of had no right to get his head on that from where he was. So it's a really good effort to get over the shoulder and bury that in the bottom corner. And as Mark commented, gave Pickford at point blank range very little chance of getting down to that. So it's a good goal and a decent cross.
Now,
having said all of that,
I think I did.
Having said all of that, I thought that was a little shining moment of an otherwise mediocre game from Raul. I don't think I'm being too harsh, but against, we had a lot of possession. We created a lot of, I wouldn't call them great chances, but we put the ball into areas where the kind of striker that I think we deserve to have at a club like Fulham, in our position, in our current position in the universe, we need a striker that can take half chances and convert them into goals out of next to nothing. And we do not have that at the moment. And that's a problem for me. It's a massive problem for me.
Joe, bless him as well. I like Jimenez. He's just old. And I want, and it kind of plays into the ESR conversation as well. ESR is what, 25, maybe 26, give or take. Yeah. So that for me warrants an investment because there's time there. Jimenez, it's just depreciating in value. And yeah, you have anomalies, but I don't think he's going to get more of a second win than he's already kind of got. So for me, it's a bit of a simple conversation.
It's to your point, for your first point, Sam, save for the pretty high wages that we've paid for Jimenez, not just across the board for Fulham, Viz, all the other players in our squad. He's on pretty high wages, allegedly. But I think if you stand back and look at the whole package, economically, it's been pretty good business. We're going to pay $5 million for him, and he's combined with Muniz to score a reasonable amount of goals out of the two. Neither of them are pushed on, and I think Raul has stopped Muniz from pushing on, frankly. But the end result from the two of them has been reasonable, and I think we'll look back on it. I wouldn't say fondly. I'd say sort of, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how we'll look back on it. I certainly not negatively.
I would say he was an astute buy, right? He was the right buy economically at the right time, because we had the FFP and we have the stand being born, and we needed to. We wanted someone cheap, relatively decent, and prem proven, who happens to be a recovery project, and we made that happen reasonably well. But I think 7 goals from open play is not the best. Yes, you can argue he maybe didn't get the best service. That's a very valid argument. But we've also seen him whiff a couple of ones that, Mooney's or any other mid to high, aiming towards Europe level striker should be putting in the back of the net. So I'm in agreement that I think it's probably time. He's done a great job. Having said that, I feel like inertia is a big part of our transfer strategy. So if someone's already there, and if Marco isn't, red in the face telling him to get out, the Cons will probably just kick the can down the road. But that's just my opinion. We'll see what happens.
I think it's pretty fair.
The opposition's goals. We're not going to go through each and every one of them, but generally speaking, it just seems like this is how we let in goals. Unless it's Liverpool banging them out in from outside the box, this is how we let in goals, isn't it? It's off of set pieces. And it's, I wouldn't say against the run of play, but when the opponent is breaking at us at full pace. But so, like I said, broader question. Do you guys think we have a good defense? Because for the longest time this season, I thought our defense was not rock solid, but I thought it was up there. You say the names, Leno, Bassi, Robinson, Anderson on his day, I think can be very, very good. And he has a distribution. Kenny Tete. I still say these names and I think, that's a solid defense. But when you look at the stats, XG and XGA, we're almost identical. We're basically at 1.5 each way. So we score about 1.5 goals a game and we let in about 1.5 goals a game. So really, we can't be that good. I'd love to dive in deeper because we seem to let in a hell of a lot of deflections. But other than the deflection, set piece and a breakaway, which wasn't, to be frank, if we look at it, wasn't even a good shot. That's a Leno screw up. But what do you guys think?
Honestly, if you asked me like 2 months ago, I would actually die on the hill that we've got probably one of the strongest defensive units. And I'm not sure what's happened really in like the past month or so, but outside of Bassi, who I really got to give him his flowers because he every game he comes in with so much like passion and he's so ready and I really, really appreciate what he's doing. I borderline get annoyed at how much of an attacking threat he has kind of become, but I also kind of want to let him cook just because I think it's important for his confidence. In the same way, I like and I mean, obviously, Robinson as well has had an amazing season. But I almost kind of see him. I've always seen him more as an attacking threat more than a defensive player. I've never seen his defensive quality as his main strength. I've always seen it him driving forward and like crossing in. I really can't articulate it too much, but something's kind of like happened there. It's not that they've kind of like lost cohesion with each other, but they just seem to have like just lost interest, particularly on that right hand side. I mean, Skibby's mentioned it a bunch of times. Sometimes I almost feel that Diop and Bassi's a better option, and I love Kenny Tete. I actually really like Castagna as well, but that right side has just felt really, really weak recently, and I don't think it requires like a full upheaval and just get a whole bunch of new signings in. But it could also come down to just there's not as much competition for their individual positions. So as a result, there's just a bit of complacency going on there. But that's one take. I actually don't know. Dad, what you reckon?
Well, I think this is a really complicated or complex and interesting one. I think to simply compare the stats of XG, XGA, it doesn't really tell the whole story. I think if you're right when you mention the names. I'm pretty happy and pretty comfortable with the individual names there, but I think that there's 3 or 4 different elements to this. Number one, if you've got a really high functioning defensive midfield, your last line of defense doesn't have to work anywhere near as hard, or it's a different level of problems that your final line of defense are saved from. That was a terrible sentence, but anyway, I'll keep going.
It worked.
Yeah, I think we haven't seen. I'm convinced, and I know this is not a broadly shared view, but I'm convinced that we haven't seen the best of Anderson, because of some injury problems, and he's not been the same since he came back. But I do think he's got a combination problem with Castagna, who he's paired up with for most of the season, and I think that undermines what could be. Bassey's gone on to bigger and better things, and I do like the pairing between Anderson and Bassey. I do like it. They just need the right level of support outside of them. Look, Robinson, he's a unique cat in terms of what he offers. He's not the greatest defender, but he's a wonderful carry and a dangerous carry of the ball up the field. To me, it was interesting. I think it was Cess who got himself into position in one of the recent games, sort of just on the edge of the box, having a shot. It was a fairly insipid shot, but we commented on the sofa that you just never see Robinson actually in those positions having a shot. And Robinson is a very direct runner on the overlap, gets the ball, gets the byline, and then it's a 50-50 as to what you're going to get. It's a lucky dip as to what you're going to get from the cross. And oftentimes it's not that great. But, if you are asking me whether I think we should move Leno on, absolutely not. I think he's high quality. Let's never forget the level that he's performed at over the last couple of years has been really high, consistently high. Sure, he's come under the scrutiny recently, and people have identified some of the weaknesses. Definitely shots outside the box. He seems to be statistically vulnerable. I cannot begin to technically explain what the hell happened on that second goal last Saturday. It looked like he tried to drop to his left and catch the ball rather than just bloody stopping it, getting his body behind it. So it almost looked like he didn't take that as seriously as he should have, which just seems like a bit of a lapse. But you cannot convince me that his career is over or his value is somehow declined. I think that's just a poor decision in a moment. So I think, let's also not kid ourselves that we have had a consistently high functioning defensive midfield. We've had enormous problems in midfield all year. We've had, so many different combinations that we've been hanging on. Pereira, love him or unlove him or dislike him, but he has not functioned well for us when he's had to play in a defensive pairing with anyone in the number 6, be it Berger or Lukic. And I
really wanted to like him in this game.
Yeah, and that's I think that just creates a massive amount of problems for us from open play. And my final point is that we need some help on set pieces, both defending them and actually taking them. I'm very dubious on our zonal approach. I get it, but it often leaves us vulnerable to pretty kind of embarrassing looking scenarios where there are just easy headers last week and this week.
Yeah.
Completely agree. I mean, to your point, I think one of the most painful ones I saw, it was almost in slow motion. Yes, they got a block on, but the Van Heck header from the free kick, It was, it just almost floated in. It was an unmarked, massive Van Heck running into space, positioning it perfectly. So I don't blame Leno there, but it was just out of the training ground, wasn't it? And it's just a little difficult to watch those things because it feels so cheap to give it up like that. Completely agree with Leno as well. I mean, he's been huge for us. His first season he joined us, I think he was the best performing goalkeeper in the Premier League. He really kept us in it. So, long may that continue, though I would be happier with a good substitute goalkeeper. But,
of course.
That's a whole nother can of worms. Okay.
I think we'll get there. If we're gonna briefly touch on that. I think from what I've seen of Bender, I'm like, I can see how that can develop. I mean, Rodak, I'll die on the hill. I never really saw anything from Rodak that made me kind of like believe your Premier League and you're like actually like in the upper echelons of like where you should be. I can see kind of glimpses of like what Bender could potentially be, and that kind of excites me, but that's a long way off. Anyway, continue on.
Yes, he's still very young. So, I mean, I guess like maybe previously in the beginning of the season, the defense was all cohesive and they were in harmony. And now they're kind of not in harmony. Or another word for that would be they're kind of in discord. So that reminds me, we have an awesome Discord that you guys should be joining. I know it sounded weird and forced because it was. But we have a Discord. It's a great platform for anyone watching or anyone listening to us to come in, have your say. Amazing information on there. We're coming up to the summer transfer window, right? So any kind of rumors, any kind of gossips, you can throw in some names in there as well and get other sort of fans' opinions. So really recommend that you guys join. Over 500 strong, right? I think we have quite a few people in there now. So yeah, it's a great place to meet like-minded fans. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I mean, moving on, I guess we have 2 games left. Brentford away at Legoland and Man City at home. Once again, 2 very tough games. Brentford are they've really turned up the gas recently. And I guess they're showing what 2 aggressive, skillful, goal-scoring wingers can do. Are they on 17 goals each or something like that? It's absolutely absurd. Geez. So, I used to always joke when we were talking about Brentford that Flecken's the dodgy keeper, but he's come good, and I hope we can do something about that. How are you boys feeling about going to Brentford and trying to do the business there? Are we hopeful? Are we aiming for a draw? Do we want to crush their European dreams?
Well, I'm hopeful in the sense that I know that we actually get up for that game, and I know that we because it's a derby, it's something we care about. And I think Silva's actually pretty good at, I mean, statistically speaking, he's pretty good at actually getting everybody up in arms about it and actually focusing and just going to a game with just passion and a want. Even doesn't regardless of where we are on the table, he understands what that actually means to the fans and to the club if we batter them, or if nothing else, we at least give a competitive game. So I'm actually very, very excited for that. I feel that can we can come away with a result there. And I'm very confident, almost to a fault, knock on wood, that it will be a very well contested game. If it's not, I'm going to be so angry. I will be furious. You'll get a very, very different side of me. I won't come with tea.
To be fair to Brentford, they are executing well. Their goal scorers, on their wingers are frankly doing a brilliant job for them. And I'm not going to try and, I'm not going to petulantly be negative about all of that simply because they're our nemesis from down the road. But it's going to be difficult away. It's a tough game for us, no doubt about it. And our form and our momentum is not great at the moment. So I have low expectations, unfortunately. And it could go either way. We could either come out and really turn our form around because we do get up for these games, or on current form, you'd have to expect we're going to get battered.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, Silva is very good at getting us up for these games, but at the same time, all it's going to take is one, and they're quite tricky. I think Thomas Frank's done really well for the budget he's been given. But they know how to do their long throws and their set pieces and sort of how to just game the system enough to like put us off balance. And I'm just hoping we don't get sucker punched early with one of those, because that would be pretty painful. But we're going to leave the rest of the preview, I guess, to the After Dark guys, so they can go through it in detail, and then they can talk about their, how we should go in and what the lineup would be and things like that. So moving on. good plug for After Dark there. But one thing I've been seeing recently that I wanted to run by you guys as well. I think it's really interesting, because I'm very clearly on one side of the fence, though I do acknowledge that there are arguments against it. But Silva's been getting a fair bit of flack from some elements of the fan base. And this is not to say he's an angel and he's deserves zero criticism. But, I am hearing some murmurs that, maybe this is his level. This is the most he can do. I don't know, guys. Let's discuss it. I think he needs to be backed some more. I do see that he is stubborn. I do see that he plays favorites. I don't think he's going to get a full war chest. I threw that in the Discord as well. But you know how the cons are there. They love a bargain. That's not to mean our recruiting is poor. I think our recruiting in general is very, very good. But we seem to just love a deal. We seem to be okay to delay a player starting with us and losing all of the summer sort of training season to make sure that we save 1 or 2 million. And that frustrates me. But I wanted to put it to you guys, whoever wants to jump on it first. Is this Silva's level? Is what's the best we can expect from him, even if we gave him what he wanted? Is it about 7th or 8th? And if that's the case, and if he does go, who should we be looking at? If you have any names off the top of your head.
I have views, but Sam, you're welcome to go ahead first.
Your views are probably more succinct than mine. I wasn't expecting to have this question brought to me. You go
right
through yours first, and then I'll give me some time.
I think it's impossible to have a conversation about a manager separate from a conversation about ownership and the way in which the owners go about it.
That's true.
I think if a manager has a large and fairly free hand in terms of who and what he can purchase, I think it's quite transparent as to what's going on. He's making his choices. They're unimpeded. He's picking the men he wants. And I think you can analyze how good he is at his job and how good he is at competing within the league and his peers. I think it's infinitely more complicated and nuanced than that in terms of the job at hand at Fulham. I think Fulham, there are many clubs that have budget problems, and I think it's not even as simple, it's not even as simple as budget constraints. It's the manner in which we like to do business, as Mark touched on before. It's this waiting till the end of a window and trying to do, budget deals and get great value on sort of recommended retail price. Maybe not even good value, but just cheap. Cheap based on asking price in the market. It's not a good way of doing things. It's not what your competitors are doing by and large. And so I think it puts Silva at a big disadvantage. It's not the way that I think he'd prefer to play, and I don't think it's the best system for Marco Silva. I think he's a man with a vision. He's passionate. I think he's very aggressive, and I think that suits an ownership model that will back him by and large to fully and let him go and do his worst. That's not the game he's playing at Fulham. I know there are plenty of people who look at the bottom line and go, well, they're spending, look how much money they've invested. And it's sizable, but sizable is the game at hand here. That's what it costs to be, or that's what it takes to be an owner of a Premier League club, even a bad Premier League club, or even a lowly Premier League club. That's what it takes. You can't just say, oh, they've spent 300 million, we should be grateful. That's what it takes, unless you want to be in the Championship or lower. If you have any ambitions, if you have any ambition, you've got to keep investing money and find ways to build value in the asset whilst losing cash.
Yep.
That is the game.
I,
So I'm not sympathetic to how much money they're having to spend as owners of Fulham. That's the game.
I completely agree. I mean, I've always said that football is essentially capitalism's game, and in order to do that, you kind of have to follow the laws of capitalism. Whereas if you spend the most, you kind of win the most, because if you have the capacity to spend more than everybody else, it's a bit of a combination of spending plus time. But I mean, we've seen it in a million examples. I mean, everything from Wrexham to Man City to Chelsea. If you spend more, you do actually achieve more, and it's a very, very clear kind of like indicator of as you said, Dad, what owners' real kind of interest actually is, or what they are predicting, or what they actually want. I mean, it's the obvious one, but if you look at Wrexham, you don't have to spend crazy amounts of money, but it's very, very clear what they're doing, and they're doing things very, very intentionally. They're not trying to get the best quality deal. They're just trying to get the best players for what they're trying to achieve. And I understand the constraints of financial fair play, but I think you do have to play with an element of risk, and you can't be risk adverse in a game where everybody else is spending so much more than you. And if you want those European spots, you almost kind of have to go about it like you already have those European spots, and you have to be building something almost in a bit of a delusional way. That's why Roman Abramovich was so goddamn successful at Chelsea, because he understood you just have to hemorrhage money, and it goes against all the laws of what you call it,
Economics.
well, no, well, a little bit, but it kind of doesn't. Investment, yeah. So, like, I mean, as you know, investors hate when you spend their money. But in order to actually get results, you have to spend money. So you kind of have to play this. For somebody like Roman Abramovich, who's a Russian oligarch, he goes, I don't care. We're doing what I want to do because it's my money. I've got more than anybody else. This is how we're rolling. I would love the Khans to do that. And it, like, I mean, I don't want to mention him, but the old guy that used to run the club that we don't want to name anymore, and we shouldn't name because they're a monster. They did have that attitude of, I'm going to spend what I need to spend. I'm going to do what I need to do because I want to be in those conversations. And until that happens, I'm not going to criticize Silver as much as I can criticize the larger project at hand, you know?
I think that's a great point, Simon. Just to jump in there, I think it really is a question of ambition. Are the ambitions aligned? We know Marco's ambition is probably Europa with us at best, and then jumping to a Champions League team. Completely fair. Young manager, ambitious manager. I think a lot of the fans, we're grateful that we're not referred to as a yo-yo club anymore. We're established Premier League. And we know we can take, we're not a boring mid-table team that always loses to the top 8 and usually beats the bottom 8, right? We're a lot more exciting than that, which is cool because we play attractive attacking football, but we're super duper inconsistent. And I think, you know, like I said, the fight is out of us sometimes. And another word that you mentioned that I really like, building. I don't think we build. I think we replace. And that really annoys me because we're always trying to look at balancing the balance sheet, right? So instead of building on Mitrovic, which is hard because he was a great pickup, right? And building on Polina, which is probably impossible given his stats were Europe-wide. But we don't even have a successor in place. We have a gem. That gem stays with us for a bit. Robinson is our gem now. And we're pretty much resigned to losing that gem. And then we try and we don't build on him. We don't use that money. We use it to like balance the budget. And maybe we can get a guy that's like 85% of Robinson, but for like a third the cost. And that's great business because he can just about do it in the Prem. So that's what I find really frustrating. Whereas you look at these other teams, always building, Villa building, Forest building, Brighton building.
It's also a great example of this. But I'm just going to throw it out there. Dortmund are insane. If you like, I was looking at something the other day that was just referring to like the past 10 years and the signings that they've made, like Bellingham, Haaland, Lewandowski, like Gundogan, like Adebayor, but they've all done it with a very, very clear intention of they're always building, and they will have 50 more in the next 10 years again, because that's what they do. They are going, we are building young players up, we are building young potential stars. This isn't the end place for them, but this is where they start, and they have that reputation. So as a result, more players want to go to them, and it's an awesome model. And we and again, it's as you said, it's not replacing, it's building. They don't think, oh, we've got to replace Haaland. They've got 4 other players that in 3 years time will end up doing that. That replacing instead of building is such a bar. I'm so glad you came up with that. We need to frame that.
The other thing, which is kind of obvious, but I think we've become so used to it and so accepting of it that it's really problematic. But I think if you got a consultant in to review the way Fulham does business and the way we're structured, I think there'd be some really, really red bullet points which would point to, I don't know, some really fundamental errors in the way we run the club. And the proxy owner being the director of football and someone who arguably knows, or certainly knew next to nothing when he came into the ownership of of Fulham, sorry. One could argue he's learned a little bit along the way, but he's not a football guy. And yet he controls the purse strings on behalf of Daddy. And you cannot convince me that he runs the club, or they run the club, as kind of silent investors who back their professional C-suite. It just doesn't seem that way. And as a comparison to Wrexham, there are a couple of guys who unashamedly knew very little about football, but wanted a crack and thought they knew how to build something by being very clever business people, and let the football people get on with it and bought into their vision and funded it. That doesn't happen at Fulham. We meddle. The Khans meddle, and it's. I think it impairs everything that we could be, and I think it's a big reason and big part of why we have that kind of glass ceiling that we just can't get beyond.
It's just not the game that requires good, like, succinct economics. It's just, you have to be crazy. You have to be a lunatic in the exact same way that if you want to win capitalism, you have to be a megalomaniac. You just have to be, you have to have that kind of,
it's kind of balls to the wall stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, but that is the only way that you achieve, because everyone is trying to play by the rules, and if everyone plays by the rules, then nobody exceeds. The only people who do exceed are the people who just gonna go like, I don't care about the rules, I do what I want, and then I'll deal with the repercussions later. Unfortunately, that's the folly of capitalism, i.e. Man City. Literally just, I'm just gonna do whatever I want. Nobody cares because they can't catch up with me. And then we have presidents who have also got themselves in the exact same situation. This is not rocket science. It's everywhere.
Great philosophical tangent there. Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean,
that's why you come to the Monday night show.
I think the problem is we're too restrictive, right? Like we don't have deep pockets. We have decent recruiting, but I wouldn't say it's on the same level as Brentford's recruiting or Brighton's recruiting, where they can pick up some real gems and polish them and move them on. I mean, I hate to talk about Brentford, but bloody hell. Watkins was there, now gone. They made money off Ben Rama. They made money off Tony, right? So they can ship their players, but they'll have ready-made substitutions, to fill. I couldn't believe they did it with Wissa and Wemo, but they have. and there you go. And for us, we don't seem to be doing that. But we also want Prem proven, right? Which means we're going to pay a premium for that. But we don't have deep pockets, and we don't want to. And the funny thing is,
that's a problem. That's a problem.
The risks we do take actually have turned out decent. I'd like to see Cuenca get more of a chance. He didn't look too out of place, even though his first match was against Liverpool. Sessegnon was a risk, a small risk because there was no transfer fee, but he hadn't really performed at Tottenham. And I think some of these risks they're worth a shot. So we'll see. In the Discord, we have been linked with a couple of free transfers. So Cole Walker-Peters and a few others. So I think that hopefully we'll see what comes of that. And one thing, just to slightly defend the Khans, though I know that's a deeply controversial and weird take, but I love to make the argument that we didn't spend enough in January, which, in my opinion, is a fact, and that we have the lowest squad value, which is deeply annoying. But it was told to me that we are 10th for wages, so we do pay our players, or we will pay someone what they probably want. Their agent wants them to be paid to join the club, and that's quite heartening because I would hate to find out that we are, 17th in squad value and 18th on wages, but we're not. But I thought it would be unfair to, without representing all sides of the argument that, at least that's probably where some of the money's going as well.
One of the other elements to this is that we're not great at attracting players, are we? We seem to be connected with players, and then it falls apart. And if you believe that we're offering decent wages, why are players turning us down? Why aren't we seen as an attractive project? And maybe because the market isn't stupid. And when I say the market, I mean the players and their agents. They look at the ambition and how things are working in a club like Fulham, and they look at the other players that are joining over the last 2 or 3 transfer windows, and it's just not enough business. You could easily look at the ESR and the Anderson money, and I guess it's 50-60 million pounds. We bought 2 players, but I'd be just as interested if we spent 35 million on 6 cracking prospective talents. But then that kind of goes against Silva's philosophy, and we've got to hold him to account for that he wants Premier League proven players. So if you want Premier League proven players, that's a difficult business with the Khans who aren't going to give you an open-ended budget. It's kind of a difficult game to play.
100%. All right. Well, we are coming up to the hour mark. Any last remarks from you guys on our chats or Everton or anything else?
I mean, there is a comment here which I'm trying really hard not to bite on because but we just kind of be going back over the same. Okay, well, I'm just going to bring it up because I'm just why not? So the Carltons wants this is David Wellington. Carltons want sustainable. You want them to take more risks, but they would be risks. The game isn't easy. But it kind of is though, because honestly, it requires risk. It's high risk, high reward. You do it literally knowing that it goes against the logic that is required. But it does work because we know that it works because we've seen it work a million times. We have seen it fail a bunch as well. But I also find that when it fails, it's because managers and teams just can't sustain the amount that they're spending, which is fair. Oligarchs or people who are linked to family networks in Saudi Arabia. But that is what you have to do. And I will just die on the hill that in order, it's okay. It's like this, right? If no, I didn't get cut out. Thank Christ. Okay. So in order to get say, for example, the girl of your dreams, you have to dress like the man of her dreams. In order to play Champions League and European football, you have to be making decisions like you're already playing Champions League and Premier League football. I think that is a fair comparison.
Yeah,
I like it. I'm all for it. That's kind of an American fake it until you make it attitude. But it does work.
100%. It does work because again, like the more you kind of like get into that, and the more you condition your players, your fan base, and the decisions of the board that is how you're doing it. You see situations like Wrexham where they've just done what? They've just done 3 jumps. So next year they're playing Championship. And it's very, very likely with the way that they're going and the way that they're progressing, maybe not next year, but the year after, they're going to play Premier League. And they've always had in their mind, we are going to be a Premier League squad. And like, what does that do? You make decisions that are entirely based on what would a Premier League squad do. And that's kind of how we need to go about it. So, David Wellington, I don't like your comment.
And David is an esteemed member of the Discord. He writes good shit. So
yeah, and he's had more spotlight than anybody else. So he should be thankful for the attention that we've given.
Well, thank you for your comment, Dave.
Yeah, but you know, in summary on all this, I kind of want to pick up and amplify what Sam said early on. I don't want to pick on or jump on Marco Silva here because I think. Maybe within the confines and within the structure that is Fulham under the ownership of the Khans, maybe this is as far as you can go. And I completely see what the Khans are doing. I get it. They're trying to run this show like a proper bean-counted show. But I worry that it's not going to work. And I think you're going to lose managers as fortunate as we are to have a manager like Silva, I think we're eventually going to lose him out of frustration and lack of achievement of his goals and ambitions. I think, I think if you don't, it becomes a recruitment problem, becomes Fulham just doesn't become a great destination. And people will look at the likes of Brentford and Brighton and Palace as having, frankly, more unadulterated ambition than us. And that's a bad thing for a football club to start projecting.
Yeah, completely.
100%. I would hate for us to become someone like a Watford who, were pretty in and around the Prem for a few years. I'm kind of showcasing my lack of history here. But now they are struggling to get anywhere near the top of the Championship because of the owners, right? Because they have a hire and fire mentality over their managers and they're kind of running it in a bit of a weird way. So that would be a pretty dire prospect for us were that to realize itself in the future. One other frustration I do have with Marco, though, just to play devil's advocate, is we seem to get a lot of signings based on the fact that they can play in multiple roles. Castagna, Iwobi, to a degree, Harry Wilson as well. But we never do it. We rarely see Wilson in the 10. We rarely see Iwobi in the 8. So we're paying extra because they're so versatile, and then the only thing we do is swap wings every now and then. So I'd like to see a little bit more of that. It would, if anything, it would confuse the opposition. So that would be quite cool. But there you go. All right. Well, I think it's just about time to wrap this up. Elton, thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure.
Oh, yeah. You're welcome. I've enjoyed it. It's actually been a good chat. Shit result. Great chat.
That's what we want to hear. Well, possibly good result, good chat, but we'll take the latter. And Sam?
Thank you very much for having me. I love when Mark or Skibby or Dave host when it's me and Dad on. It kind of feels like somebody coming to your home and cooking you a meal, which is the best way to eat. Because I feel comfortable here and you've done the majority of the work. So me and Dad just sit here and look pretty, and we are forever appreciative of Mark and what he brings.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Sam.
Well said, Sam. Well said.
All right, guys. Well, with that, we will see you on Thursday for After Dark. Thanks for tuning in.
Come on, you once.